Hi guys, welcome or welcome back to my channel if you're new. So this is going to be my birth story. I am 3 weeks postpartum and things are still fresh enough in my mind that I can remember them, but I also feel like it's a good time now that I've kind of adjusted to being a mum of two. But my oldest is at nursery today, so I thought it would be a good time to talk about my second birth. I am just feeding baby at the minute, and he got hungry as soon as I hit record, so I'm just feeding him at the moment. So yeah, I thought I would go through my birth story, and if you haven't watched the birth vlog, there will be a link to that down below if you want to watch that, which does have his name at the end. So I will kind of explain his name in this video as well, because I'm absolutely obsessed with it, and it goes really well with my elder son's name as well. So yeah, without further ado, let's jump right into my birth story. So I had to be induced at 37 weeks because I had something called IUGR, which is intrauterine growth restriction. So basically his growth had slowed down and he was actually dropping on his growth curve. So they did some more scans and they found out that I had something called placental insufficiency, which is where my placenta didn't form properly during pregnancy, and I basically had lots of little holes in it. So baby wasn't getting the right amount of nutrients that he needed. So the decision was made to induce me at 37 weeks. So on the 20th of November, I got a phone call at about 8 o'clock in the morning saying that I was the first on the list and I needed to get there as soon as possible because I also had a cervical stitch or a cervical suture in, so that needed to be removed before they could begin the induction process. So I was called at about 8 o'clock and we got to the hospital at about 9:25. We would have got there earlier, but there was lots of traffic, and Tom, my husband, his parents, who were looking after my eldest Teddy, they got caught in the traffic, so we got there a little bit later than expected, but all the midwives and the nurses were super understanding. So Tom actually wrote down all of the times on his phone, and I've got them on a piece of paper behind me. So at 9:56 I was put on the monitor to make sure that baby was okay, and he was absolutely fine, and they needed to basically get a baseline for the rest of the monitoring because I was on the monitor a lot throughout the induction. If you're going to be induced, expect to be on a monitor pretty much all the time. So from 9:56 until 10:35 I was on the monitor, and then I was taken to another room because I was in the induction suite, and they don't usually do cervical stitch removals in the induction suite. So I was taken to a separate room and was given some gas and air, and they took the stitch out, and it took a while because I had it put in much earlier than with my first pregnancy. With my first pregnancy I had it put in at 22 weeks. With this pregnancy I had it put in at 16, so a whole 6 weeks earlier. So they had to make sure that the stitch was very thoroughly up there, and it took them a long time to get it out, and there was one piece that was being very stubborn and didn't want to come out. So yeah, eventually they got it out. It was very uncomfortable, it did hurt, and I did bleed a little bit afterwards. So if you have a cervical stitch in, expect that it is gonna hurt getting it removed. It's not the most comfortable thing in the world. But yeah, it got taken out, and then I was taken back and put on the monitor for, I can't remember if it was half an hour. It was half an hour to an hour, just to make sure that he was okay and the stitch removal hadn't put him in distress in any way, and he was happy as Larry in there. Wasn't phased at all. Sorry, I just had to move back a bit because my back is killing me. So I got back from my stitch removal at about 11:20, and then at 11:55 the first round of Prostin gel was put in. Now that didn't hurt. I thought it would hurt a little bit. It stung a little bit because I'd literally just had my cervical stitch removed, and they had to do a lot of poking and prodding, so my cervix was a little bit tender, and they have to put the gel just behind the cervix. So I had the first round of gel put in, at 11:55, and then at about 12:30 I started getting some tightenings already. They were very, very mild, a little bit uncomfortable, but I could talk through them. It was absolutely fine. But at about 2 p.m, me and Tom decided to go for a little walk around the hospital. They said that we can go around the hospital as long as we don't leave the hospital grounds, which apparently someone has done before, which is mind-boggling. And then we walked around the hospital grounds for about 35 minutes, and then we went back onto the induction ward to be monitored again, just to make sure that he wasn't in distress and he wasn't getting stressed out by the gel. And again, he was absolutely fine. So by about 3:15, things got a little bit uncomfortable. So they checked me, and my cervix had already started to thin and soften. So I wasn't dilated at that point. That was at about 3:15. So yeah, I wasn't dilated by 3:15. I would have been very surprised if I had been, but no, it was just starting to thin out and starting to soften. Do you need a burp? So the thing is, with the Prostin gel, they can only give one dose every 6 hours, and they don't want to give you too many doses because it is an artificial hormone, and it can stress your body out and stress baby out as well. Yes. So that's basically why they had me on the monitor so much, just to make sure that he wasn't in distress. But yeah, you can only have the gel every 6 hours, which was the only bad thing about it. Like, they can't really give you much more than that. So from 3:15 until about 9:15 at night, I had a lot more monitoring. I'd been checked a couple more times, nothing had really changed, and the contractions had started to slow down a lot as well. So me and Tom went for another walk around the hospital just to see if that would get things going again, and I don't think it did. I think I'd had a couple of tightenings, but nothing really that was noteworthy. And then at about 9:45, I was checked and I was actually at 1 centimetre, and the goal was, as soon as I was dilated, to break my waters, so things could start progressing much more quickly. But the midwife actually couldn't reach my waters at that point because my cervix was still posterior rather than anterior, so she couldn't reach them at that point, which was a bit disheartening. But yeah, from 10 o'clock at night till about 4 o'clock in the morning, me and Tom just slept. I did have some Oromorph as well, just to kind of take the edge off some of the contractions. Excuse you. So yeah, about 4 in the morning I woke up, and then at 4:15 the second round of gel was put in. So once the second round of gel had been put in, I decided that I was absolutely knackered and needed to conserve some more energy. So I slept until about 8:30, and that took us to the 21st of November. So I woke up at about 8:30, and then at about 10:35 the consultant came in. It was the same consultant who had removed my stitch, and he attempted to break my waters, but he couldn't reach them. And by that point I was exhausted. Like, I was just tired of people putting their hands up my privates and I just wanted things to progress. So I did get a bit emotional by that point. But then my guardian angel, a senior midwife called Sarah, she came up. I'm just trying to see what time. 11:35. So she came in at about 11:35. Now, she said that she had spoken to my consultant, which was the fetal medicine specialist, and he had said that my waters need to be broken. So she has been a midwife for over 20 years, and she said, if you will let me, I will attempt it. I am pretty good at breaking waters. So I said, yep, do whatever you need to do. So she said, right, we'll monitor you for a minute, and then I'll come back and then we'll attempt it. So I was put on the monitor again just to make sure baby was fine, and he was. And then at 11:59 my waters were broken. So 24 hours after my first round of gel had been put in, I was dilated enough where she broke my waters, and it was a massive gush, because at that point I had no epidural, I had no pain relief. I had I had gas and air while she broke my waters because it was quite uncomfortable. But once my waters were broken, it was such a massive release of pressure, and I felt his head instantly drop. It was the strangest sensation. So she said, right, you're gonna be leaking now for the rest of the time until baby arrives. So we'll get you moved up to a delivery suite in the consultant ward. So pretty much instantly contractions started picking up. So my waters were broken at 11:59, so at 12 o'clock basically, and then by 12:30 my contractions were in full swing, regular, very, very like intense, very, very quickly. And I was pre-warned of that by a lot of the staff, that it would get very intense very quick. So by 1:25 I was in a delivery suite with another midwife also called Sarah, and it was her first day back after maternity leave. So I was very, very it's quite a big honour actually, being someone's patient for the first time after maternity leave. But she was absolutely fab. She was so kind and so gentle. So the handover had been done, so I was taken up at 1:25, and then at 1:40 my midwife put a cannula in, just in case I needed insulin or fluids or anything like that. And I did need to check my blood sugar every hour because I did have gestational diabetes. So every hour I needed to do a finger prick test, which was not the most comfortable thing in the world when you're already having contractions. But yeah, so things started to progress pretty quickly from there. So at 1:25 I was taken up to the delivery suite, had my cannula put in, and then by 3:30 the contractions were really, really intense. For those 3 hours from having my waters broken, contractions starting, to about 3:30 I was using my comb to start with and hypnobirthing breathing, and then I think it was about an hour or two after that I started using my TENS machine because it was getting a bit too intense, and I was getting Tom to squeeze basically my hips, try and squeeze my hips together, like my hip muscles. That seemed to help quite a lot. But then by 3:30 it was just so, it was getting intense. So by 3:30 I asked for the gas and air, which seemed to help a little bit. I managed with the gas and air for about half an hour. So my midwife asked, do you want me to check you and see how far along you are? And I didn't think I'd be that far along. I thought I'd be at like a 4 maybe, because I was only at 1 centimetre, like 1.5 centimetres when my waters were broken at 12 o'clock. So she checked me at 4:05 and I was 6 to 8 centimetres dilated. She said standard with fingers like not stretched at all, I was at a 6. Stretched, I could be at an 8. And at that point I'd said, right, that's my personal goal for pain. Well, not personal goal, but I'm starting to feel my body tire out. Can I have the epidural? And she said, I don't think you need it, but if that's what you want, then we'll get the doctors in and we'll get your epidural administered. And this is where things started to go wrong. So 4:05 I was checked, and then at 5:20 the doctors came in to try and put my epidural in, and it took them 5 attempts. 5. For some reason they just could not get it in, and on the 5th attempt, ooh, excuse you. So on the 5th attempt I thought that they had got it in, because I was starting to feel that very heavy feeling in my legs. They started to feel hot, which is a feeling that I am familiar with because I've had 2 spinals before, and I've also had 1 epidural before. So I thought, oh, it's working. So they thought, fabulous, we'll leave you to it. Here's your button. So they give you, yes, So they give you a button basically, and every 20 minutes you press that button and it administers more medicine into the catheter in your back. And I was pressing the button and I couldn't really feel much. I couldn't, it didn't feel like much was happening. Like my legs felt heavy, but they didn't feel numb. So I thought, oh, it's just taking its time. I'm sure it'll start working soon. But then I was still needing gas and air to get through contractions. I thought this isn't right, because I remember with my first labour and birth, as soon as I had the epidural, I was calm, I was collected. I very rarely needed gas and air for contractions. It was just the odd one where I felt a bit more uncomfortable than usual, but this was still just as intense, still feeling them like rising up and then coming back down. My legs just felt a bit heavy, but I could still move them, which is when it kind of clocked, something's not quite right. So I kept going for an hour of this. Oh, I'll just wait and see. It's probably not working yet. It'll work in a little bit. So my epidural was put in at 5:20, and at 6:43 p.m. I felt little guy's head slot down into the low of my back. It felt like his back was in my tailbone and hitting against my tailbone, which was obviously him dropping right down into my pelvis. And I just felt the sudden urge to push. And it was just the biggest wave of pressure down there. And I was screaming. Like I said, I need to push. Like I can't not push. So they said, right, do what your body needs to do. If you feel like you need to push, then push. So at 6:43, I started pushing, and at 6:49, this little guy was born. Yeah.
Come see Mummy now. Do you want to take the gown off and we can put a towel on the baby?
And I felt everything. So my epidural did fail. Are you still hungry, my love? I think someone's still hungry. So yeah, at 6:49 p.m, this little guy was born, and it was just the most magical thing after such a whirlwind of a pregnancy to finally have him here. Now, I knew that he was going to be on the smaller side because he was only on the 10th centile for his growth scans. And this little guy was 5 pounds and 7 ounces. So he was dinky. He was so tiny. But he was born, and my umbilical cord was actually quite short as well, so they couldn't put him on my chest. They had to put him on my belly. Because my umbilical cord was very short, so they wanted to get it cut straight away, so they could have me do skin to skin with him, because originally I wanted to do delayed cord clamping, but just for the interest of everyone and so we could have that bonding moment, we decided to just cut the cord pretty much straight away. So that's it. That's my birth story. It's a bit of a whirlwind and probably very chop and change, but yeah. So we had a couple of days in hospital after that because they have a traffic light system in our hospital for the low birth weight babies, and he was on red. So it took a couple of days, and he had jaundice a little bit. He didn't need the light, but he just, they said he looked a bit yellow. They did the jaundice test and they said he has got a higher level of jaundice. So we'll give him a few feeds and he'll hopefully get it out of his system with his like wet and dirty nappies, and that's what happened. But he had to have multiple heel prick tests, like we're talking like at least 3 in each foot, because they had to check his blood sugar levels and make sure that they were all okay. And he did have to go to the NICU for about an hour as well because his blood sugar levels had dropped because he wasn't feeding properly. But now, as you've probably just seen, he feeds like an absolute champ. So yeah, we are doing very well. So I'm 3 weeks postpartum now, and I've pretty much stopped bleeding. I didn't tear, which was just absolutely crazy. I thought I would definitely have torn, but I didn't, and I feel really, really good. It's a lot mentally with like the sleep deprivation and having a 3-year-old already, but yeah, it's just surreal having 2 children, but I absolutely love it. So this little guy here, he's very milk drunk right now. But yeah, this little guy is called Finley William John, and I absolutely love his name. So we were so stuck on, oh, excuse you. We were so stuck on a boy's name. Because obviously we've got a boy already. Yes. So we were stuck on a boy's name. We really, really struggled. But Finley was always the name we kept going back to no matter what. And yeah, it just felt right. And then when he was born, and after the last few weeks of pregnancy, from gestational diabetes to placental insufficiency and IUGR, you know, a lot of those were big risks for stillbirth, and you know, having a lot of issues and a lot of problems, and he defied those odds. And yeah, I feel like his name's very fitting because Finley means fair-haired warrior, and he is definitely a warrior. He went through a lot when he was born, and he went through a lot in pregnancy as well, and he is absolutely thriving now, which I'm just, yes. I'm just absolutely besotted with him, absolutely besotted. So his middle name, William, is actually my dad's middle name, my granddad's middle name, and his godfather's middle name as well. So I wanted to keep that name going. And then John is one of my husband's best friends. They've known each other since they were 3 years old. They've known each other since nursery, and I knew that I wanted to incorporate his name in there somehow. Oh my goodness. I think someone's a bit tired. So yeah, Finley William John, and my first son is Theodore Ron James, and I think they go super well together. Theodore Ron James and Finley William John. I think they go super well together. So yeah, that is my birth story. Someone is very, very squirmy. We're just about to go out to an appointment as well, so I wanted to get this filmed and made sure that it was ready because I've got a couple more videos I want to film before Christmas, and I'm hoping of filming a little Christmas Day vlog because this is going to be our first Christmas with 2 children, and I want to just ingrain that in my memory and make a little video for it. So if I get time I will, but yeah, I hope you guys have really enjoyed Finley's birth story. He's looking a bit milk drunk right now. You are. But yeah, I hope you guys have really enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.